So I watched the video that Mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, shared to commemorate Nakba Day. While the video is very powerful and beautifully produced and is mainly truthful in the sense that the story, this woman, survivor of the war of 1948, the story she tells is true, but the supposed context that Mamdani shares for her story is filled with roughly thousands of lies of omission, because what led to their expulsion was a war of their own choosing, a war they initiated. Another part of that war that was left out of this video, which doesn't even mention the war, of course, was the fact that 6,000 Jews were killed in the war between 1947 and 1949. Prior to the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, to be a Palestinian was not to be an Arab or a Muslim. It was to be a Jewish or Arab Palestinian living in the British Mandate of Palestine. The land of Palestine, it was not a state. That land was ruled by the British. Prior to the British, it was ruled by the Ottomans, before them the Egyptians. A host of foreign powers had ruled Palestine for millennia. And in 1947, the UN voted to partition Palestine into two states to give both of the people living in Palestine, the Jews and the Arabs, independence and freedom from foreign rule. The Jews of Palestine, at that time there were about 625,000 of them, the Jews of Palestine rejoiced and celebrated the creation of the first Jewish state since their expulsion from the land of Israel. And many of the Jews living in Palestine at the time had lived there for generations. There had always been a Jewish presence in the land of Israel. Judaism itself is based in the land of Israel. The Jewish people were born in the land of Israel. When Jews received the news around the world of the establishment of a Jewish state by that UN vote, they also thought, and the Zionist leaders also thought, that Arabs would also welcome that opportunity to create an independent Arab state of Palestine, because that too would have been historic. There has never been an independent Arab state of Palestine. There has never been a state of Palestine. And when the Zionist leadership welcomed that vote in the UN, they said, we hope for peace with the Arab state of Palestine. We look forward to years of peace with the Arab state of Palestine. But what happened? Arabs in Palestine and every single Arab state rejected the creation of an independent state of Palestine because they rejected the creation of a Jewish state. Their hopes for a state of their own did not overpower their vehement rejection of Jewish sovereignty in that land. And so they not only rejected the partition of the land and the creation of two states, but they declared jihad. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amina Husseini, who had been the leader of Palestinian Muslims under British rule and who had already allied himself with the Nazis during the Holocaust, aiding in the Nazi cause during the Holocaust. He had been wanted for Nazi war crimes. He didn't return to Palestine because he didn't want to be arrested by the British. But from his post in Egypt, he oversaw and created an army of the Holy War, an army of jihad. And what many people do not know, and what is completely missing from this video, of course, very conveniently, is the fact that the expulsion and the flight, the voluntary flight of 700,000 Palestinians, that was not a foregone conclusion. Arabs of Palestine could have had their own state. They could have embraced two states for two people. They could have also, prior to 1947, embraced the many offers by the British, embraced by the Jews, by the way. The Jewish leadership in Palestine embraced the idea of power sharing, of self-governance led by both Arabs and Jews in Palestine. This is, that utopian one-state solution that Zoran Mamdani claims to support. The Jews in Palestine, the Zionist leadership embraced that idea. It was the Arab leadership who rejected it. They did not want to share governance with the Jews of Palestine. They did not want Jews to be equal, because prior to the British Mandate, under Muslim rule, under the Ottomans, Jews had been second-class citizens. They didn't want Jews to be equal citizens. They certainly didn't want to rule government with Jews. So not only did they reject the idea of living together in one state, they rejected the creation of two states. The Grand Mufti, during the Peel Commission in 1936, when the British said, well, what do you want to do with the 400,000 Jews living here now? He essentially said they'll have to leave. So it's really convenient that all of that context and all of that history is left out of that video. You are meant to feel, coming away from this video, the way Mamdani feels, that Israel is a sin, that Israel should not exist, that Israel forcibly expelled hundreds of Palestinians for no reason other than to create their own state. No, didn't have to be that way. Israel could have been created alongside a free and independent state of Palestine. When they're all shouting free Palestine, yeah, we could have had a free Palestine back in 1947 had the Arab leaders of Palestine embraced that idea. Sadly, they declared jihad. And the reason they lost that war wasn't because they were less powerful. After all, it wasn't just the Arabs in Palestine who were fighting against the Jews of Palestine. The armies of Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon joined that holy war. And in their own words of their military officials, they said, this will be over in 2 weeks. We're going to destroy Tel Aviv. We're going to rid Palestine of the Jews because this is Muslim land and it will always be Muslim land. They thought they would win, and they didn't, not because the Jews were more powerful. The Jews did not have any superpower helping them. The reason the Jews won was because they had no choice. They had nowhere else to go. This was 1947, 2 years after the liberation of concentration camps, when Jews who had decided, maybe I'll go back to my home in Poland. Maybe I'll go back to my home in Germany. Maybe I'll go back to my home in Greece. These Jews, many of them, were killed or told, go back. Why weren't you turned into soap? And then, of course, there were the Jews, 850,000 of them, in fact, who had been living in the Muslim world, were also forced to leave. This idea that Jews should go back to where they came from. Jews came from the land of Israel. The term Holy Land, where do you think that came from? When do you think that land became holy? It was in biblical times, the Jewish people. If you want to learn more about the complex history, both sides of the story, about the flight and expulsion of Palestinians between 1947 and 1949, about what led up to that war, about the decades beforehand, maybe you'll want to read my book, Ghosts of a Holy War, the result of 5 years of research. I wrote it when I was based in Israel as a foreign correspondent, and I think you'll learn a lot from it.